The sickening sound of a body hitting wooden stairs froze Jackson Cole, a black man, where he stood. Grocery bags slipped from his hands, oranges scattering across the driveway. Grace, his wife, 5 months pregnant, lay crumpled at the bottom of their porch steps, her arms instinctively wrapped around her belly. At the top stood Officer Brian Keller, the so-called HOA compliance officer, a white man in his mid-40s wearing a khaki uniform that looked more like a costume than authority. His mirrored shades hid his eyes, but the smug twist of his mouth said enough. His hand was still extended from the shove he'd just delivered. "I told you those lights were not authorized," Keller barked, snapping his clipboard shut. "Community Code 14B, no decorations before December 1st. Jackson's pulse thundered in his ears. He was halfway to Grace before realizing he'd dropped everything. The grocery bags burst open across the walkway as he knelt beside her. Blood traced a thin line from her temple, her breath hitched through clenched teeth. "Don't move, sweetheart," Jackson said, slipping into the calm, precise tone drilled into him by 15 years of military training. "Just breathe. I've got you." Behind him, Keller clomped down the stairs, his boots striking concrete with practiced arrogance. "She should have listened," the officer muttered. "Now look what she's done. Damaged community property." He pointed toward a cheap plastic planter that had tipped over in the scuffle. The absurdity nearly short-circuited Jackson's anger. His wife was bleeding, barely able to speak, and this man was worried about a planter. Jackson called emergency services, relaying details with the same discipline he'd used calling for medevac under fire. Estimated arrival, 4 minutes. When he hung up, Keller was still talking. "Unauthorized decor, non-compliant colors, and now you've caused an incident. I'll need your insurance information for the HOA report." Jackson rose slowly, blocking Keller's view of Grace. At 6'2", he towered over the man, but Keller didn't back off. "You laid hands on my pregnant wife," Jackson said evenly. "You've crossed a line." Keller smirked. "Watch your tone, soldier. Around here, I enforce the law." Have you ever met someone who thought a clipboard made them more powerful than the law? What would you do if a so-called HOA cop pushed your pregnant wife on your own property? Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments below. We love seeing where you're tuning in from. And if you believe no one has the right to lay a hand on a woman, especially not on a pregnant one, smash that like button and subscribe to Story Arc for stories where real justice always shows up. Jackson's jaw tightened. "No, you enforce nothing. You just made yourself part of an assault investigation." The wail of distant sirens echoed down Cedarview Drive, and for the first time, something flickered behind Keller's glasses. Doubt. Grace's hand tightened around Jackson's as he crouched beside her. Her voice trembled but stayed steady enough to say, "Help me inside, Jackson. I just need to lie down." "An ambulance is already on the way," Jackson told her gently. He took off his jacket and slid it beneath her head. "We're getting you and the baby checked out. No arguments." His tone was firm, but it carried the same calm command he used when giving orders that weren't up for debate. From the corner of Jackson's eye, movement stirred. Curtains twitched, blinds shifted. Neighbors peeked out, drawn by the noise, but too afraid to step outside. Keller's so-called authority had clearly trained them to stay silent. One elderly man across the street even lifted his phone to record, but didn't dare cross the road. "Excuse me." Keller's voice cut through the quiet like a bullhorn. "I'm still addressing you regarding these violations." He jabbed his clipboard toward Jackson, his face reddening. "Your wife's overreaction doesn't change the fact that you're in breach of HOA code. Those lights need to come down today, or daily fines will apply." He pointed at the broken planter again. "And your wife damaged community property during her fall. I'll need your insurance information for the incident report." Jackson stared at him, disbelief muting the rage boiling under his skin. The man was treating Grace's assault like a paperwork error. His training kicked in again. Identify the threat, prioritize the response. Keller wasn't just an annoying neighbor. He was a danger to his family, and that required containment. "My wife needs medical attention because you assaulted her," Jackson said, each word clipped and deliberate. "In about 3 minutes, an ambulance will arrive, followed by police who will review our doorbell footage. That camera," he nodded toward the lens above the door, "caught everything you did. For the first time, Keller's expression faltered. His head turned slightly toward the small device, the reflection of its red recording light glinting in his lenses. That's absurd, Keller snapped back quickly. I never touched her. And even if I had, which I didn't, I was enforcing community policy. Those lights reduce property value by 15%. Look it up. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a hiss. You should know something, Colonel. My brother's vice president at Summit Trust Bank. He handles half the mortgages in this county, including yours. One call and your rate doubles overnight. Think before you make this ugly. Jackson met his glare without blinking. You just made it ugly the moment you pushed my wife. Then, pulling out his phone, Jackson said quietly, Let's see who answers faster, your brother or the United States Army. Keller laughed under his breath. Calling the Army? You really think that means something out here? He tucked the clipboard under his arm, leaning close enough that Jackson could smell the chemical shine of his cologne. This is private property, Colonel. Your rank doesn't matter past the gate. He took a step back, his confident smirk never fading, while Jackson ended the call and slipped the phone into his pocket. For a moment, silence hung between them, just the hum of streetlights and the faint sound of Grace's shallow breathing behind him. Then, from somewhere far off, a low vibration rippled through the cool evening air. At first, it was distant, like a storm gathering beyond the hills. Keller's head tilted, confused, as the sound deepened into a steady, rhythmic growl. The windows of nearby houses began to tremble. The vibration became unmistakable. Diesel engines, heavy ones. Keller's smirk flickered. And that's when the first faint beam of headlights appeared at the end of Cedar View Drive. From the corner, a column of olive-drab transports turned onto the street, 3 military convoys moving in perfect formation. The lead Humvee halted beside Jackson's driveway, followed by a medical truck and 3 logistics carriers stretching down the block. Neighbors stepped onto porches in stunned silence, phones rising to capture what looked like an invasion. Out of the first vehicle stepped General Samuel Briggs, his battle dress uniform immaculate despite the dust. He scanned the scene once, his gaze locking on Grace lying on the walkway. Dr. Cole, he said, kneeling beside her, voice low but commanding, looks like you've taken quite a fall. My medics will stabilize you until the ambulance arrives. Grace managed a weak smile. Bit of an overreaction, General. He chuckled softly. We were already in motion, just took a detour. Then his eyes lifted to Jackson, the warmth gone. What happened, Jack? Before Jackson could speak, Keller stepped forward, trying to recover his authority. Excuse me, you can't bring military vehicles into a civilian neighborhood. I'm the HOA enforcement officer here, and this is a private matter. The general turned slowly, measuring him the way he would size up a hostile officer overseas. And you are? Officer Brian Keller, Community Compliance Division, Keller said, flashing a badge engraved with the Silver Ridge Estates emblem. You and your men are trespassing. These trucks are blocking resident access. I'll need you to clear them out immediately. Officer Keller, the general replied evenly, one of my officer's wives, 5 months pregnant, has been assaulted. Until local law enforcement arrives, my only concern is her safety. Keller scoffed. Assault, she tripped. He's using his connections to avoid a citation. A young lieutenant stepped forward, tablet in hand. Sir, the doorbell camera feed is live. The general watched the recording in silence. On screen, Keller's shove was unmistakable. When it ended, Briggs' jaw tightened. Thank you, Lieutenant. He faced Keller again. You're finished here. Somewhere down the street, police sirens began to wail, joining the rumble of idling engines. For the first time, Keller's voice cracked. You can't do this. I'm with the HOA. Not anymore, the general said. The sheriff's cruisers arrived just as the medics lifted Grace onto the stretcher. Their lights washed the quiet street in red and blue flashes. General Briggs handed his tablet to the lead deputy without a word. The deputy watched the footage once, his expression hardening. That's assault on a pregnant woman, he said flatly. Officer Keller, hands where I can see them. Keller's jaw clenched. You can't arrest me. I'm a certified HOA officer. You're all making a huge mistake. Officer Brian Keller, you're under arrest for assault on a pregnant woman. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, an attorney will be provided for you. Do you understand these rights as I've read them to you? Keller's jaw locked. His voice caught somewhere between disbelief and rage as the cuffs clicked shut. The badge on his chest didn't save him. Neighbors stood along the sidewalks, murmuring to one another, the fear that had ruled this community finally breaking. Jackson climbed into the ambulance beside Grace. Her face was pale but calm now, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. The general leaned in through the door. "She'll be all right, Colonel. My medics confirmed the vitals are strong. We'll follow you to St. Helena Medical Center." At the hospital, the doctors confirmed what Jackson had prayed for. No fractures, no placental damage, just bruising and a strained muscle in her back. Both Grace and the baby were safe. They kept her overnight for observation, and when the couple was finally cleared to go home the next morning, Jackson expected silence, maybe even caution. Instead, they turned the corner and saw lights, hundreds of them. Their entire house shimmered beneath a canopy of multicolored Christmas bulbs, every color Grace had picked herself. A half-dozen soldiers in winter fatigues were still on ladders, finishing the roofline. Sergeant Luke Harmon jogged over, saluted, and grinned. "Hope you don't mind, sir. The general said to deploy proper holiday morale support." Grace laughed softly, tears welling up. "They're perfect." Neighbors began stepping out, carrying casseroles and blankets. The woman from across the street, Clara Jensen, approached with her husband. "We're so sorry," she said. "We should have stopped him long ago. The board met last night. Keller's been removed permanently. We've had enough." General Briggs walked up last, leaving behind a set of papers, official reports, sworn statements, and the doorbell footage already submitted as evidence. "Justice served, Jack," he said quietly, "and this neighborhood's finally free." As dusk fell, the colored lights flickered on, glowing against the December sky. Grace leaned against Jackson, whispering, "All that for a few Christmas lights." He squeezed her hand. "No," Jackson said, for the line he crossed. If you believe no one should ever get away with hurting a woman and calling it authority, smash that like button and subscribe to Story Arc for stories where the ones abusing authority finally meet the law they pretended to be.